They thought I wouldn't survive without them. Now they're about to learn how powerful a woman becomes when she has nothing left to lose. The road back home felt longer than it ever had. Maybe it was the weight in my chest. Maybe it was the memories scratching at the back of my mind like old ghosts refusing to rest. 7 years. 7 long years since I last took this road, since I last tasted the air of a town I once promised myself I'd never return to again. The sun was sinking behind the hills, spreading soft gold across the dry fields. Dust rose behind my car in quiet waves, dancing like tiny storms in the fading evening light. My hands tightened around the steering wheel. I wasn't coming back as a son. I wasn't coming back as the boy this town knew. I wasn't coming back to pick up broken pieces. I was coming back because of one call. One sentence. One truth I was never meant to hear. My father had forgotten to hang up. I had called him to check in, just like I did every few months, out of habit, not love. I had spoken to him, told him briefly about my life in the city, the house I bought, the job that kept me busy. He had sounded normal, distant, formal, the way he always was. I said goodbye. He said goodbye. But the call didn't disconnect. I heard his voice, clear and cold, talking to someone near him. Here's a burden. Just 3 words. 3 words that burned through my chest harder than any wound. 3 words that sucked the air right out of me. Maybe he thought the world owed him something. Maybe he thought I did. But that night, instead of shouting or demanding answers or crying like I once would have, I just went quiet. Completely quiet. And in that silence, something inside me broke free. A week later, I signed the papers to sell my home. My dream home, the one I worked years to afford. A $980,000 house, built with my sweat, my patience, and every piece of self-worth I had rebuilt after leaving this town. I sold it not because I needed money, not because I had a new plan, but because I refused to live in a life shaped by him anymore. I refused to hold on to anything he could point to and say, I gave him that start. Let him think I lost everything. Let him believe I walked away with nothing. Revenge isn't always fire. Sometimes, it's ice. A cold, calm decision to disconnect from the person who once controlled your whole life. The last stretch of road curved toward the farmhouse, her farmhouse. Myra. Even the sound of her name made something in me tighten. She was the girl I loved before I knew what real love cost. The girl I left behind because of fear, misunderstanding, and the weight of voices that were never hers. I parked the car by the old wooden gate. It was partly broken, hanging down on one side. Weeds grew wild around it, brushing against my jeans as I walked through. The farm looked different now. Smaller. Lonelier. Like time had taken its strength and left behind only the shell. I stepped onto the wooden porch. Each plank creaked under my feet, just like they used to when I snuck here late at night to meet her. The sounds echoed in the quiet evening, pulling old memories back to life. The door opened slowly. She appeared there, framed in the warm yellow light from inside. For a moment, she didn't breathe. For a moment, I didn't either. Ion, she whispered, like she wasn't sure if I was real, or if I was a ghost her heart had created. Her hair was tied in a loose braid over her shoulder. A few strands had escaped, softly touching her cheeks. Her clothes were simple, worn. Her eyes. God, her eyes. They still carried that old softness, but now there was something tired in them, something heavy. Myra, I said, my voice lower than I expected. She stood there, staring at me, like 7 years were too big to cross with just one look. You came back, she finally said, her voice barely above breath. Just passing through. I lied, even though we both knew I never passed through this place. She glanced behind me at the empty road, then back at my face, as if searching for answers I hadn't spoken. Silence stretched between us. Not uncomfortable, but unfinished. Like a sentence waiting for its ending. The wind moved through the trees, brushing against the old barn. Something metallic clinked in the distance. The whole farm felt like it was holding its breath. She stepped aside. Do you want to come in? I shouldn't have. I knew I shouldn't. Too many wounds lived inside this house. But my feet moved on their own. Her home was dim, lit only by a small lamp near the window. The floorboards were old but clean. The furniture looked like it had been repaired too many times. The air smelled like dry wood, warm tea, and a hint of loneliness. She closed the door and stood with her hands clasped in front of her. "How have you been?" she asked softly. "Okay," I said. "Working. Living." She nodded, but her eyes dropped to the floor for a moment, as if she was hiding something behind that calm expression. I looked around slowly. Same walls. Same cracked window. Same place where she once held my hand and told me she believed in a future that I was too scared to fight for. Everything softened inside me, but also tightened. This wasn't the reunion of two lovers. This wasn't fate pulling us back together. This was life circling around with unfinished business. She leaned against the table, her fingers lightly tapping its edge. A small sign of nervousness she used to have when she hid something from me. "You sold your house?" she asked quietly. "Yeah." "That was your dream home." Her tone wasn't judgmental, just surprised. Maybe sad. "It was," I said plainly. "Why would you?" Her voice faded, unsure if she had the right to ask. I shrugged slightly. "I heard something that changed my plans." Her eyebrows lifted just a little. "What did you hear?" My throat tightened. Not because I was ashamed, but because saying it out loud made the wound fresh again. I didn't answer. Not yet. Her gaze lingered, searching my face with that same gentle intensity she always had, the one that made it hard to lie, even when I wanted to. Outside, the night grew darker. A dog barked far away. Crickets started singing in the dry grass. We stood in the silence of a memory neither of us had moved on from. 7 years had passed, but the air between us still felt alive, warm, familiar, and dangerous. Our past hovered around us like a shadow, full of broken trust, unspoken truths, and one goodbye that shaped both of our lives. But I didn't come to reopen wounds. Not yet. The real story was still hidden, and something in her eyes told me she was hiding more than I was. The house felt colder once I stepped fully inside. Not the kind of cold that comes from winter or open windows, but the cold that comes from silence, from empty rooms, from years of surviving instead of living. Myra placed a cup of warm tea in front of me. Her hands trembled as she set it down, barely noticeable, but I saw it. I always noticed the small things about her. She sat across from me at the wooden table, the same table where we once laughed over badly cooked dinners, where she once traced my fingers with hers and told me she believed in us. Now, the distance between us felt wider than oceans. "How have you really been, Ion?" she asked softly. Her voice held something fragile in it. Something tired. Something older than the years that passed. I took a breath, letting the steam from the tea warm my face. "I've been doing what everyone does," I said. "Working. Trying. Pretending." She nodded slowly. Pretending takes a lot of strength. Her words dug into me deeper than I expected. Pretending. Yes, that's all I had been doing. Pretending my life was fine. Pretending I didn't care about the family that never cared for me. Pretending I didn't wonder about her. We sat in silence, listening to the soft ticking of the old wall clock. Every second felt heavier. Myra's eyes moved around the room nervously. She wasn't looking at me. She was avoiding something, or maybe protecting something. "You changed," she said quietly. "So did you," I replied. She gave a small, sad smile. "Life does that." My eyes drifted around the room. Everything was familiar but worn down, like it had been held onto for survival instead of comfort. A picture frame on the shelf was turned face down. I wondered what was inside it, but I didn't ask. Some truths reveal themselves only when they want to. "I didn't expect to see you again," she said suddenly. "Ever." "I didn't expect to come back," I admitted. "But things don't always go how we imagine." She stared at me gently, almost as if waiting for me to open up. But I wasn't ready. My father's voice still echoed in my mind. "Here's a burden." I pushed the memory down. "What brought you here?" she asked. "Just needed to get away." Her eyes flickered. She didn't believe me. She knew me better than that, even after all these years. "You sold your house," she said again, like she needed to hear the words out loud to believe them. "Your dream house." My jaw tightened slightly. "Yeah." That must have been hard. "It wasn't," I said honestly. "It felt freeing." She swallowed, her throat moving slowly. I could see she wanted to ask more but didn't know if she had the right. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The silence wasn't heavy this time, just full of things we didn't know how to say. I leaned back slightly. What about you? How's life been? She hesitated. A long hesitation. One that told me she wasn't sure how honest she should be. It's been quiet, she said finally. Quiet. A word people use when they don't want to say lonely. Work. I asked. I manage, she replied. The farm. It's not what it used to be, but I try. Some seasons are kinder than others. Her tone cracked slightly, just enough to reveal that the farm wasn't just hard, it was a struggle. And your family? I asked. She looked away again. That same avoidance. That same fear hidden behind her calm face. It's just me now. Those 4 words sat between us like a heavy stone. Just her. Living alone. Working alone. Carrying burdens alone. Something tightened inside my chest, but I pushed the feeling aside. I had no right to feel protective. Not after I left her. I cleared my throat. Do you ever go into town? Only when I need to, she said. People have long memories here. I understood. This town never forgot anything. Not even things that weren't true. The clock ticked again. Tick. Tick. Each sound seemed to pull us deeper into old memories. And then she asked the question I was trying to avoid. Ayon, what did you hear? My breath caught for a moment. I didn't want to talk about it. I didn't want to put his words into the air and let them become real again. It doesn't matter, I said quickly. It does, she insisted gently. Something must have hurt you deeply to leave everything behind. Her eyes searched mine, not demanding, but pleading. Not for drama, but for truth. I looked away, feeling the anger, the disappointment, the hurt rise in my chest. He forgot to hang up, I finally said. She frowned slightly. Who? My father. The room stiffened. Myra's breath stopped for a moment, like she already knew the rest, like she remembered the man who once controlled everything in my life. What did he say? She whispered. I clenched my jaw, forcing the words out slowly, steadying my voice even though my heart was shaking. He said. I swallowed. That I'm a burden. Her eyes widened, full of disbelief and pain, not for herself, but for me. Ayon, she breathed. I'm so sorry. I didn't respond. I didn't want comfort. I didn't want pity. I wanted answers, not from her, but from life. Myra leaned forward, her fingers tightening around her mug. You didn't deserve that. Not then, not now. Something in her voice cracked, and for the first time, I felt anger rise inside her, anger on my behalf. You always carried everything alone, she said. Even when you shouldn't have. I looked at her. Really looked at her. Her eyes were soft, but something behind them was trembling. Fear. Guilt. Secrets. 7 years had passed, yet she still reacted like she owed me something, like she was scared to hurt me again. What aren't you telling me? I asked quietly. She froze. Her breath faltered. Her fingers stopped moving. Her eyes dropped to the table like the answer was hiding in the wood. She began, but her voice broke. She wasn't ready. And I wasn't going to push. Not yet. But the shift in her body, the nervousness, the way she avoided certain corners of the house, it all told me there was something here I didn't know. Something she had guarded for 7 years. Something connected to us. The atmosphere thickened, like the walls themselves were listening. I should check something, she said suddenly, standing up too quickly, almost running from the table. Myra, I said, my voice steady. What happened 7 years ago? Really? She didn't turn around. Her shoulders tightened. Her breath hitched. The silence stretched dangerously long. Then, in a soft whisper that barely reached me, she said, some things you weren't meant to hear back then. Her words struck me like a blade. Not loud. Not dramatic. Just filled with the weight of truth she had hidden for years. Something was off. Deeply off. And for the first time since I walked into her house, I realized. Myra wasn't just hiding pain. She was hiding a part of the past that could change everything. Myra didn't turn around for a long time. She stood near the hallway doorway, her back tense, her head lowered slightly, like she was fighting with herself. The lamp behind her cast a soft glow around her figure, blurring the edges, making her look both familiar and impossibly distant. Something inside her was breaking. And something inside me was waking up. "Myra," I said again, quieter, gentler. "Look at me." Slowly, painfully slowly, she turned. Her eyes glistened, not with fresh tears, but with the weight of tears she had held back for years. They shimmered under the dim light, telling me more than her lips had ever spoken. "I never wanted you to come here like this," she whispered. My heart throbbed heavily. "Then why did you react that way when I came? Why did you panic when I walked toward that hallway? What are you hiding from me?" She didn't speak. She didn't breathe. Her fingers twisted nervously around the ends of her sleeves, the way she used to do when she was scared. I took a step toward the hallway. "Ayon, don't," she said, her voice cracking sharply. That fear, real, desperate fear, made me stop for a second. Not because I didn't want to push her, but because her fear didn't feel like fear of me. It felt like fear for something else. Something precious. Something vulnerable. Something she had been protecting with everything she had left. But the silence between us grew heavier, and I felt the truth tugging at me, pulling me forward. "I have to know," I said softly. She closed her eyes, as if bracing herself for a storm she had been avoiding for 7 years. "Ayon, please." But the plea came too late. I stepped past her and walked down the narrow hallway. The floor creaked beneath my feet. The walls were lined with fading paint and tiny drawings, stick figures, scribbles, little stars drawn in blue ink. I stared. My heartbeat stumbled. Drawings? Small scribbles? Childlike stars? Why were these here? I reached the door at the end of the hall, slightly open, just enough for a sliver of warm light to spill out. "Ayon, please don't," she said behind me, her voice breaking in half. I pushed the door open wider. The room was small but neat. A tiny wooden bed with soft blue sheets. A little shelf filled with toys, some old, some new, all carefully arranged. The air smelled faintly like baby powder and something sweet, like vanilla. And then, I saw it. The wall above the bed. Pictures. Dozens of them. Pinned, taped, carefully arranged. Moments frozen in time. A little boy smiling at a birthday cake. A little boy holding a toy car. A little boy running in a field. A little boy sleeping with his tiny fist under his cheek. My heart stopped. Every bone inside me went still. A little boy. With my eyes. My smile. My hair. My throat tightened so hard I couldn't breathe. "Myra," I whispered. But she couldn't answer. She stood in the doorway, her face pale, her eyes glassy. She looked like she had been holding the secret for so long that her body no longer knew how to react now that it stood exposed. I stepped closer to the wall. My fingers trembled as I reached out and touched one of the pictures, a simple photograph of a newborn baby wrapped in a white blanket, sleeping peacefully. My voice broke. "Who is he?" Her breath hitched, and the tears she had been holding back finally fell. Yours," she whispered, her voice barely a breath. "Ayon, he's your son." The world didn't just stop. It shattered. I felt the air leave my lungs. I felt the room spin just slightly. I felt something inside me collapse. Grief, anger, guilt, disbelief, all crashing together at once. My son. The words felt foreign in my mouth. Heavy. Fragile. She wiped her cheek shakily. "I wanted to tell you. I really did. But the night you left." "That night," I interrupted, my voice hoarse, "I thought you betrayed me. I thought." "I know," she whispered. "You misunderstood. But I tried to reach you after that." My heart clenched. "Then why didn't you?" Her eyes hardened, not in anger, but in pain. "Because your father answered," she said quietly. "Every call. Every message. Every attempt I made." The air thickened. "He told me you wanted nothing to do with me," she continued, her voice trembling. "He said you said I was a problem. A mistake. A burden you didn't want to carry." My chest tightened painfully. "And I believed him," she whispered. "Because that night, you left without looking back." Her tears fell faster, like she couldn't stop them now. "I didn't know he lied to both of us," she said. I didn't know he hid everything. I didn't know he kept your son from you. My legs felt weak. I sat down slowly on the small chair by the bed, my hands covering my face. My father. His voice. His words. His a burden. I thought he meant me. But he meant them. Myra. And my child. He ripped 7 years from me. He tore apart a family before it even began. I felt my chest burn with a strange mix of grief and cold, sharp clarity. I stood up slowly, turning to Myra. You raised him alone, I said, my voice low, steady. She nodded, wiping her tears. I did my best. I didn't want him to grow up with pain. And you protected him, I said, even if it broke you. She looked away, ashamed of something she should never have been ashamed of. I took a slow breath, trying to steady my voice. I sold my house, I said. Not because I lost hope. Not because I lost control. But because I realized something. She looked up, confused. I stepped closer. My father wasn't just wrong, I said. He was the burden. Her lips parted slightly. And today. I took another breath. He lost me. The words came out calm. Too calm. It wasn't loud revenge. It wasn't shouting. It wasn't breaking things. It was the quiet kind. The kind that hurts deeper than anger. I walked to the wall again, touching the picture of the boy with my smile. Can I? My voice cracked. Meet him. For a moment, Myra froze, surprised, scared, hopeful, everything at once. Then, with a trembling exhale, she nodded. Yes, she whispered. He's in the next room. He's sleeping. But, you can see him. My heart pounded painfully as she led me to the small room next door. The door opened. There he was. My son. Sleeping peacefully, curled up under blanket, his tiny chest rising and falling gently. I felt my knees weaken. My eyes burned. My soul cracked open and healed at the same time. I didn't touch him. I didn't want to wake him. I just stood there and whispered, I'm here now. Myra stood beside me, silent, tears slipping down her cheeks. And standing in that dim room, beside the child I never knew, beside the woman I once loved, I realized something. Revenge isn't always about hurting someone back. Sometimes, it's simply choosing who you refuse to lose again. Final line, expanded impact. My father called her a burden. He never realized he was the weight I finally chose to cut loose.